Ghost in the Shell is a science fiction action movie directed by Rupert Sanders. It stars Scarlett Johansson and is a remake of a Japanese anime film from 1995, one of the most successful anime movies of all time, and I'm kind of surprised by how many people don't actually realize that. There's a lot of people I speak to who had no idea that it was originally a cartoon, and before that it was originally a comic book, so there you go. So this movie is set in the future in what is clearly meant to be a Blade Runner-esque Japan, even though it's not ever mentioned specifically that it's Japan, but there's a lot of Japanese stuff in there. But this is a future where people are enhanced with robotic parts, sort of cybernetic augmentation, and we got robot bodies with brains put in them, hence Ghost in the Shell. And Scarlett Johansson plays a robot named Major Mira Killian, who's had a brain put in her, and she's part of a counter-terrorism unit, and they come across this sort of a hacker guy who is getting into people's brains and doing stuff, and so she goes after him because she kind of realizes that there's a bit of a connection that she's got with this guy. In the meantime, there's another organization that wants to shut her down because she's gone rogue, and they've got a kick-ass spider tank. This movie's filled with awesome stuff like spider tanks and robot people with brains and cool stuff. And that's one of the things that I really loved about this movie. Now, look, I got to admit, I haven't actually seen the original anime because I'm just not an anime fan. I'm not saying anything bad about it because I totally respect anyone who digs it. And I've tried it on many occasions in my life to get into it, but it's just something I'm just not into. So I haven't seen the original. So this opinion is coming from someone who is just fresh into this movie. I'm just taking it for what it is. And I really liked it. This movie was full of unique, amazing ideas. There were so many refreshingly original concepts and things in this film, and oh my god, it was jaw-dropping to look at. The entire world that this movie is set in, the city with all these gigantic holographic billboard things happening and stuff like that, was just so much fun to look at. And even in times when the movie was kind of getting a bit boring in places, because it was a bit of a slow burner, this one, there was still always something great to look at. Not just that, the photography in this film, the framing, I mean, my god, there were so many shots that I was looking at them and just thinking to myself, that could be a promo still for the movie. There was tons of that. And I gotta give credit to the soundtrack for this movie by Clint Mansell, who is just one of my most favorite film composers. He went from being the lead singer of a great band called Pop Will Eat Itself, and now he's this major film composer, and yeah, it's kind of weird, but I dig it. And the soundtrack in this movie was great. It was very unique. It wasn't like a Hans Zimmer or a James Horner soundtrack. It was just very much a Clint Mansell soundtrack. I also really liked the performances in this film. Scarlett Johansson was fantastic. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding her casting, being that she's supposed to be playing an Asian character, but look, I thought she was fine, and the producers of the original animated movie also gave her their blessing. I mean, look, it's just one of those things. ScarJo's gonna bring in the box office bucks, but I love what she brought to this character. She kind of treaded this fine line between just being a stiff, boring robot to someone who, did have a shred of humanity left in them, and I was totally convinced by her performance. I thought she was absolutely fantastic. Another standout for me was Michael Pitt as Kuze, one of the villains of the piece. He was like a very disheveled looking robot guy with, a brain put in him, but I love the way that his voice kind of sounded like a synthesized computer voice, almost like Stephen Hawking. And yeah, again, he just had this real cool sort of humanity to his character, very different character to Major, but yeah, I love the dynamic between the two of them as well, and what happens in the plot. Yeah, it was really intriguing. And I loved seeing Beat Takeshi in this movie as Aramaki. This guy is just awesome in anything he's in. If you've seen Battle Royale, you know who I'm talking about. This guy is just one of the best Japanese actors. He's like in everything, and I absolutely love him. And I love that he was the only character in this film who was speaking Japanese, but everyone seemed to understand him. So yeah, I dug that as well. It was, again, something unique. The action scenes in the film were good, but I didn't think they were anything there was no real sort of wow factor. I mean, let's face it, these days with fight scenes scenes in movies, that kind of stuff, you've got to really ramp it up in order to bring something new into it. But they were really good, and I always like seeing Scarlett Johansson kicking ass. But yeah, you know, they served the story, but they didn't really sort of bring the wow factor. So as much as I liked the film, there were things I didn't like about it. For one, like I said before, it was a slow burning movie in a lot of parts. There was kind of like, you had ass kicking sequence, slow burner, ass kicking sequence, slow burner. It was like, the action sequences were sort of, you know, strung together by these really slow exposition bits. And, you know, again, they were okay because there was always something great to look at. But there were a few times I actually, through this film, was sort of thinking to myself, like, oh, would I maybe give this movie a 5? Like, it's good, it's not great. And then something would happen that would get me thinking, oh, no, this is, you know, maybe a 7 or 8 kind of thing. I kept sort of going up and down with my rating throughout the film. So just be warned that, yeah, like I said, this movie is kind of slow. It is, you know, in a way a lot like Blade Runner was, but a bit more colourful. And there were just a few things that didn't sit well with me as far as the plot. Now, like I said, I liked Scarlett Johansson in this role, but there was a bit of a problem, and it's not a major spoiler, in that the brain that goes into her shell was that of a Japanese girl, and so there was some conflicts in there that I can't really say too much. It's got something to do with her family, I guess, that just seemed weird. It kind of seemed like she should have either been a Japanese actress, or maybe the brain shouldn't have been from a Japanese girl. So, yeah, that didn't really sit too well with me. And one other thing, I kind of got that this movie was trying to have a theme about, you know, this philosophical thing about our humanity and how important it is, and the blur between humanity and technology, that kind of stuff, which, from what I do know about the original anime movie, it was explored a lot better in that film, and I could see that they were trying to do that in this film, but it did fall a little bit flat for me there. But to be honest, there were so many things I liked about this movie, and I must admit, I was kind of surprised. I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. I love the production design, the look of it, the ideas, I love the performances, the music, you know, the photography. Everything was really, really good, just except for the fact that it was a bit slow. So overall, I'm going to give Ghost in the Shell a 7.5 out of 10. So thank you for taking the time to watch my review, and if you've seen Ghost in the Shell, let me know what you thought, and let me know what you thought if you've seen the original, like how you compare the two of them together. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And one other question, if you've seen Ghost in the Shell in 3D, let me know what that was like, because that was one thing, I was watching that movie thinking to myself, my god, this would have looked jaw-dropping in 3D, so I'd actually like to know how good the 3D was in that film, so if you've seen it, let me know what you thought. So drop me some comments either here or on Facebook. All the social media links are in the description below, because I like to talk about movies and I would love to talk about movies with you. I'll catch you next time.
Click subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest movie reviews. Skynet will be taking over any day now, so what have you got to lose? Nyah.